Someone welcome us.
Hi, how's everybody doing? Welcome to the Longbourn Literary Society's weekly live video. What do we call this? The Society Papers.
Yes.
So we are taking your questions today.
Yes. We should probably give a little update on our stuff first before we start the questions.
Good idea.
Yep. I think that'd probably be the better way to do it, because if we run out of time, we can always push questions off, but I'd hate to not give our updates.
Yeah.
All right. Shall I start?
Sure, go ahead.
Start today. Okay, what do I have going on now that I've said that? I know Tuesday I have an Austin Authors post that will share an excerpt from my book that is releasing sometime this month. At the end of the month. I don't have the pre-order set up or any of that yet. I'm still working on the cover. In fact, that's why I am still having my breakfast as we're doing this, because I got up late because I didn't go to bed until about 4. I was working on a cover. So I'm just cluing into what's going on in the world right now. And what else? So I have a book coming out. That is Mr. Darcy's Comfort. It'll be coming out at the end of the month. I'll have another book next month, which will be Confounding Caroline. I've started working on the sequel for that. I just scheduled the first Thursday 300 post that'll go with that. That's I actually have a title for that. That one's Delighting Mrs. Bennet. And I have started working on the sequel to Mr. Darcy's Comfort, but I still don't have a title for it. I have the first chapter done, but I don't have a title yet for the book.
Good.
And yeah, it's the one that's about a character that people don't really like.
Yeah.
But they haven't read him as I've written him, so they need to withhold judgment on Mr. Collins until they've read my book.
Right.
All right. And I think that's everything. So who's next?
Zoe?
Sure, I'll go next. Of course, I think I told you guys, shared last week, that Darcy's Surprise Betrothal is live. It's you can get it everywhere, I think, except maybe some obscure little Scribd or places like that. But most places have it for sale, including my Gumroad page, which we shared last week. There's my Austin Authors giveaway I'm giving away 2 ebook copies of that book. It's open until 11:59 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow. So you've got, I don't know, 30 some hours, I think. And all you have to do is go over to Austin Authors and find my post and put a comment in, and you'll be entered to win one of the books. I told you guys before about my new work in progress and how it didn't have a name. It was for nameless WIP. Well, now it has a name. The name is To Save Elizabeth, which kind of gives a clue about what happens. But the last thing I want to share is about my Patreon page. And I've mentioned it before. I don't know if it was on this broadcast, but I've talked about it in other places before. And Patreon is a place where people can go and they can pledge support to help. I don't even know if I'm going to word this well. Back in the day, centuries ago, patrons would support artists, writers and sculptors and painters and all that. And Patreon is an updated version of that. So people can go to my page. It's patreon.com/Zoe Burton Author. And there's a video there for you to look at and a list of what you get for different levels of support. And it's just a great way for people who really like your work, who really believe in you, to support you a little bit extra. And I just wanted to share about that. So, go check it out. No purchase required. Just go check it out. And that's it.
I'm one of your patrons, and I like getting the links and stuff early. So
Right. That's a big thing. A lot of people my patrons get links to my blog posts early, and depending on their level, they get either a PDF copy of my book when it's done, or they get a digital copy.
Yeah.
And top level patrons get a monthly video, Q&A video. So far I haven't done any because I only had one top level patron and she was like, I have no questions. But now I have a couple, and so now I'm probably going to set it up so that, people can ask me questions. So there's a community tab that they can ask questions on too. So
that's exciting.
Yeah.
For me, The Secrets of Pemberley is out now. It's on Amazon. It's enrolled in Kindle Unlimited, so it's nowhere else yet. In a few months, it will be. So if you read on Nook or Kobo or iBooks, you'll just have to be a little patient. Where did Eileen go?
There's
Marco.
I was just at my mug, and I didn't want to, tip it all back.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Okay, I was just like, well, we could have lost connection, could we? The rest of us will be there. Okay.
I finished my breakfast now.
Okay. So I'm still in the process of reviewing the print because I decided to learn a new process this time because I don't know if anyone's noticed, but my last couple of novellas I haven't done a print with because I wasn't happy with how some of the graphics were turning out, uploading a Microsoft Word file. So I decided to try InDesign, and I need to physically proof the book. So I've got to wait for mail to come and all that sort of stuff. I've got a blog tour coming up. I'm going to be posting about that on my blog. The dates starts, sorry about my calendar over here, April 10th through the 16th. And there's going to be giveaways with that. And I'm going to do more of the Elizabeth Bennet diary outtakes, where I've got video and diary entries as though I was the Elizabeth Bennet in The Secrets of Pemberley, because the story's only from Darcy's point of view. And I've also got a guest post plan that's just a little bit of historical research that I got into for the book. Didn't have as much of that in that book as I usually do. But and then other than that, I'm just working on Loving Elizabeth, which was called The Bennet Brother, in case anyone still remembers that.
I do.
So I still really like that title, but I don't want to confuse people. And I do like Loving Elizabeth because that's really the central theme, is that Elizabeth has an older brother who is best friends with Darcy, and so they meet younger and then they're separated. But Darcy has always had a soft spot for Elizabeth since that first meeting. She's a little bit more confused, but as 16-year-old girls tend to be, it's a confusing age. As Elizabeth says about Georgiana, she's gotten over the most trying age. Although with my 4-year-old daughter, I'm not so sure about that. I really hate thinking that the worst is to come because right now it's really rough. Anyway, so, I've also just gotten edits back. I'm going to be part of a multi-author series that's not Jane Austen fan fiction. It's Regency romance set in Scotland. It's Scottish Regency, and it's called The Marriage Maker. So there's this gentleman, his name is Sir Sterling James, and he's kind of falls into this strange little talent he has where he's actually quite good at matchmaking people. And it comes about usually as, a wager or something. And the first book is about, there's a duke's daughter that he's interested in. And I'm not sure I can understand all of it if I remember it all correctly. I don't want to say the wrong way and make it sound like they're doing something that's like not possible historically with conferring the title and stuff. But anyway, it's important for him to marry the duke's daughter. But her name, by the way, is Chastity. or Chastity. It's got the 2 T's, yeah. So it's Chastity, and she's got 3 younger sisters, and she refuses to marry until they've married. And she keeps turning down men, and her father's just had it. And he's like, you know what? You need to get married. I want to see that you and your sisters are all safely married and, with good men and everything before I die. So he brings in this matchmaker. He's like, okay, fine. Yeah, sure. I will meet your challenge, and I will find husbands for your sisters within, I can't remember what the time period is. It's like very short, just a couple weeks or something. And yep, they all get matched up, and then the 4th book is him with her, actually. And it was really sweet. Because it's like, after all, she's like, she's mean to him. She's like, why are you putting up with all this? He's like, why do you think? So that was really sweet. And so the series continues with these other themes, 4 books each, and there's some spies and all these other themes. But the matchmaker, Sir Sterling, shows up to nudge some couples along in every book. And my theme is Scottish, or Flowers of Scotland. Sorry, Flowers of Scotland. So the descendants of Robert the Bruce, if anyone knows him in Scottish history, he was one of the kings after Great Britain tried to invade and take over after they were invited, because that wasn't such a smart idea on Scotland's part. They're like, hey, we have a couple different descendants that could be king right now. Could you guys come and mediate for us? And England was like, oh, yeah, uh-huh. So then they had to kick England back out a little bit, if you watched Braveheart, which isn't super accurate. But anyway, so then they reestablished their own monarchy for a little bit. And then after Queen Elizabeth, they got united with England again. Honey, you'll have to wait. So pointed at you. She's so pointed at me. Anyway, so Robert the Bruce is a very important person in Scottish history. Lots of folklore about him. Lots of people revere him. But he loved the ladies. So he's got plenty of children that did not get to inherit titles and stuff. And the Flowers of Scotland are descendants of his illegitimate children, who one historian has decided should have a better place in life. And he collects all sorts of genealogy and is able to track them down, and gets the help of Sir Sterling to find a match for them. And so I get to introduce the historian, and then I also match the first couple, which are very interesting. I really like them. And it's kind of like a Cinderella theme, where they're very poor and a wealthy man comes and falls in love with them and turns the story around. They're novellas, so they're short reads. And a couple months from now, I'll be in another theme, which is called Wallflowers of Scotland. And the historian is going to be the hero in it. So definitely check out that once we get it out. It's called The Maid of Iverness. And tell me what you think of the hero, and then tell me what you think of the historian, because he's going to be the next hero. My next Scottish one. So I'm excited. I haven't done a whole lot of non-Jaff, but excited. Sorry, I've rambled a long time.
That's okay.
It's exciting.
I do that every time. Okay.
She likes words. Lots and lots
She
and lots
does.
of words.
My brain gets sidetracked, and then my daughter. We'll blame it all on her.
There you go.
She'll have plenty to blame on you later, so
Mm.
that's the way it works. All right.
All right, here we go.
Deborah Ann says it sounds very interesting.
Oh, great.
Cool.
And so far, I think she's the only one that's with us. So we had some questions that were on the Facebook page. Just one moment here while I get myself together. And I know that Deborah had asked a question, so I figure we should probably start with hers. Seems to make sense. So we had a bunch of questions that were asked on our page. I'm just showing you the they actually are there. Um, and Deborah had asked, do you have any conventions that you attend or groups you would suggest to new JAF authors to help promote their books? Any information that you can suggest to help new authors on promoting their book? So who would like to tackle that first?
I could do a little bit of that.
Okay.
So I think I did see a question. I don't know if this is under that question, if there was another question related to it too about blogs and how to get on the blogs.
Yes, there was one that was above that.
Okay, so I'll just answer that as well, since that's more of what I'm familiar with than conventions. So a lot of the blogs that if you're in certain groups, it all depends on the author and the blog host as to if they're sharing a whole lot into all these other groups. But you can look around on Facebook, Google Jane Austen, and find a whole bunch of different groups. Obviously, the three of us are in Austen Authors, and we share there. Another one that was made by bloggers, so you usually will see a lot of those hits there, is Mr. Darcy's Extensive Readers. Mm-hmm. And they have a list on the side of the ladies, I think they're all women, and then I think links to all their blogs too. And then once you go to the blog, a lot of them will have a tab on the top about contacting, the review policy, their email. They're very nice. You can just email and say, hey, I'm a new author. I've got a release coming out. Would you have time to host me? They've got busy lives, so try to give them a couple weeks notice. They might not have time for a review, but they almost always have time for a guest post of some sort. And then, spend some time looking at the blog, seeing what they typically post, seeing what their readers typically like. A giveaway always gets a lot of hits, which it can be rough at first when you're a new author, especially if you're having to put money out for it, if you don't have your own files that you can send. But it's also helpful with getting your name out. And I do love that side of the community. I started as a blogger, so I really like that aspect of it. A lot of times you'll get readers that just hop around on the different blogs, and that's great because they'll follow you on the blog tour. And if you're doing excerpts, then they'll see that. If you're doing guest posts or outtakes like I'm planning to do, it helps them become more of a super fan. The downside then is if you're doing like a giveaway everywhere, then you've got people that are only interested in when it's free, but that can still be helpful because they can still tell other people about it who aren't necessarily only free readers. And so that's fun. But yeah, it's really difficult if you're severely introverted to put your foot out there and contact someone that you don't know, and you're worried that you're going to sound rude or be obnoxious or something, but really you're fine, and they're very used to it, and they're happy to have people because then it gets more traffic to their blog too. So yeah, I think just you've got to make that step, but there are ways to see them out there. It's not some sort of secret club where we just know about it. It's out there on Facebook land and stuff. As for other conventions, I haven't really done any conventions. I did a Jane Austen conference for JASNA a couple years ago, and I haven't been able to do that since. They also don't typically have authors, like fan fiction authors there, and like they had a book signing. Not that anyone came to my table for that. But, and then I'm trying to think. There's a couple author communities I'm involved in on Facebook that are local to my area. Those people are the ones that tell me about like, oh, there's a Virginia book festival every year and stuff. And those are things that I wouldn't have known about otherwise. Some of the people know about them because they're involved in setting them up and stuff. So if you can get involved in local communities like that, that's a good way to find out about things. Libraries probably post about things. Something as national as BookCon, I don't have plans on going to for a while at least, and wouldn't really know how to tackle that.
There's another one called Romantic Times, and I don't remember. It's called RT. When people talk about it, they call it RT.
Right.
But
yeah, I've seen that.
And I don't. It seems to me that it's early-ish in the year, like soon.
It's coming up. Yeah.
Yeah. But there's a group that I joined on Facebook called Author Events Around the World or something like that.
Smart.
Now, there's not a whole lot in my area because, you know, I'm out in Podunk. But there's a lot of different, I mean, from different states and different countries and that there's a lot of, so that's a place you could potentially, you know, find something too. But Jasna is the other thing, you know, there's romantic times. There's, well, let me plug in for my NEO RWA group because I was going to do this, but I changed my mind. But we have a convention in September in Cleveland. And if you are an attending member, if you're an RWA member and you pay to go to the convention, you can sign up for a space to sell books. So you could sell books, you could meet, you know, readers, because I guess they have a lot of readers, and it's in September. So like I want to say the 14th in the evening is the book signing, and then the next day, the 15th, is the convention. But you have to pay, you know, to come to the convention to get the table. So
yeah, I haven't gone to any conventions. There aren't a lot that are within driving distance for me.
Yeah,
that's true.
I would have to fly, and it would be international travel just to go to the U.S. So it's price prohibitive to do that.
Right.
I am a member of the Romance Writers of America Atlantic Canada group, and we do have meetings once a month. If the snowstorm does not come and destroy things for us tomorrow, which it's supposed to do, we're supposed to have reenactors from one of the Highland military groups from like the 1700s coming to talk to us about what it was like to follow the men around as, you know, the wives, and to talk about the uniforms and the weapons and all of that sort of thing. You know, they come in full gear. I'm really excited about it. Been excited for 2 months, and the weather report looks pretty bad. So that may not happen. But we have different, we have our meeting that's just about, you know, the business of, you know, what's coming up and all of that. And then we always have at least an hour's worth of workshop time. So a lot of times that's based on craft. Like the last one that we did was just some basics on series, goal, motivation, those sorts of topics. So that's been really good. We have a really good group for that. And they also would know about things that were happening in the area, like Word on the Street that happens every year around here. We've had table at that where we've just gone and we've given away books. Everybody brings their own books. You sign up for your time to be there. You give away your books to people who come by. So it's a great way to get your books out into the community. Yes, it costs you money to buy those books, especially when you're in Canada and you have to pay the duty when they're coming into the country. So, but it's worth it. It's worth it to give them and to get it out there.
That reminds me too, is that look for indie bookstores. Like there's a couple of indie bookstores in the Cleveland area. So it's a drive for me. It's like I'm an hour and a half from Cleveland, but they don't do anything in Youngstown, so I have to go to Cleveland. But there's one in particular that I went to in July of last year, and it's a book signing, and they had local authors. So look for indie bookstores and even go to them and say, hey, can I do a book signing in your, you know.
Oh, I thought of a few other things. That's how my brain works. Speaking of RT, I know for my Virginia group, I've gotten emails about they were wanting to add things to goodie bags.
Yes.
It could be a book or just a bookmark or anything, you know. And so even if you can't attend the conference, that's a good way to get them familiar with you and to bring yourself to new readers. I wish that I could be coordinated enough to come up with 100 things within the next couple of days to give it to them. But if you are coordinated with enough swag things stockpile, which plenty of authors do, then that would be an option to get your name out there a little bit more. I mentioned Facebook groups for finding bloggers, but there's also Facebook groups just for promoting your books. Be careful about the rules. Some of them don't want promos only on certain days, just like our group. Some of them don't want to see things too often. So, keep a list somewhere. Making author friends is a good way too, because like you two have known things that I haven't known and stuff. And then also, like in the spring and the summer, if your town or different areas in the communities have like town days, that's what we call them in Virginia, at least, like an open market with vendors and stuff. Some of them will let you do like a vendor stand of your book and everything. Again, those are all things that you're going to have to be prepared on. You're going to have to order the books yourself, sell them yourself, keep track of taxes yourself. So that's not something that I found super marketable for me, but I do know others that do that. And, I think if you're the type of author that wants to connect with your community and know your readers super well, then that's great. Because they're going to walk away with a book right there. They live in your town. You're going to see them again at the grocery store maybe. And, I mean, I would love that for someone to be like, hey, I loved your book. I hardly ever get that on the internet, let alone real life. But yeah, some people, that's really powerful. And again, it might be something that you have to put a lot of effort into to get a little bit of reward, but they might talk to other people about it. Because reader people tend to be friends with other reader people, and then they talk about it. They might be in book clubs and whatnot. So,
Right. One thing I was going to share as well, just give me a second. I'll give you the screenshot of it. On Austin Authors, which we're part of, if you scroll down the home page on the right-hand side over here, there's a Be Our Guest.
Yes.
You can fill out an application form to be a guest blogger, which would be another way that you could get your name out in front of a different audience rather than, just your own blog. And look, there's Zoe's.
There's my post.
Giveaway still to show you that. So that's one thing I had wanted to mention too, since we are part of Austin Authors. Got to promo that a little bit,
Yep, we do.
And I had another thought, and then I totally forgot it. So
sorry.
Maybe it'll come back later. So if I just go sometime along the way, you'll know why. The one that I think, well, Deborah said that this is all very helpful. Thank you.
Good.
So
Great.
good. I'm glad we hit some of the high points there. Cheryl was the other one who had asked about things that you had mentioned there, Rose. What is the best way for a new author to publicize their book? Her new book has gotten all 4 and 5 stars, but only 4 reviewers have submitted, and sales are okay, but not what I had hoped. Yes, that's the way it goes. Sorry.
I haven't looked. Did you look at her book? I haven't had time to look at her books.
Yeah, I have just a minute. How do new authors get interviewed on JAF websites? So what Rose was saying about contacting people, and then there's the Austin Authors link as well. I did have to ask to find out, what her writing name is, because we don't always all go by our pen name online. So one thing, if you're new, you're going to need to make sure that people know who you are. Like when you're posting, make sure that you know that, not necessarily like in our group, but if you're posting about your book and things like that, then get familiar with who you are, because you're new. So they have to see your name a few times before they start to recognize it. I'm just personally bad with remembering names, so that's why I had to ask. Maybe the rest of you probably could remember it, but I'm particularly bad with names. So you would need to show it to me a few times. What I was
Can I share what made my release so good?
Yes.
Okay. You know, I had covers. Everybody knows I love my covers. They were plain white. They had a heart. They were easy to do, and they were gorgeous. And my sales, and I know, I mean, people telling me I've got good reviews for the most part. People telling me that they've got, that they.
Uh-oh.
You know.
You're
So,
freezing up, Zoe.
What?
You're freezing up.
You froze.
Did I really?
You did. So you might want to repeat whatever it was that you were saying.
Oh, lovely. Well, let me start from the beginning. You know, I had the white covers with the hearts on them, and everything was simple, but my sales were not what I thought they should be. So I made a kind of a big deal about it because I was changing my branding. One of the big things that helped my sales was that new cover. And I know not everybody likes the new covers, but, and it was, I like the cover. I like the cover. I loved my hearts. Okay. But that's a really good cover, I think. So make sure that your cover screams Regency, Darcy and Elizabeth, because I was told that my old covers kind of said contemporary. And, you know, I learned the hard way that for the most JAF readers do not want contemporary. So that's my biggest advice, is make sure that your covers look like Regency romance covers.
Mm-hmm.
That's my advice. That in a really good blurb.
Yes. I was just going to, just a second. I can't think and talk at the same time all the time. It's pretty sad, but true. You'd think after teaching for so many years I would be able to, but no, even then I would have to stop and say, just a minute, let me get this for you. Okay, this is Cheryl's book.
Yeah.
Just so everyone knows who she is. She writes as Lily Bernard, and her first book, this is her first book, which is New Beginnings. And she has up to 7 reviews now. She only had like 4 or so when she posted before. But one thing that I'm just going to mention that just stood out to me, because I do secondary characters, and this book, if you read through, it's not about Wickham, but right at the beginning, the first name that you see is George Wickham. So you might want to be careful about that. Secondary characters
they don't sell well.
Grab the attention of readers quite the same way that Darcy and Elizabeth do.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that, you shouldn't do secondary character books. You just have to realize that they're not going to sell as well as the Darcy and Elizabeth. And I've got plenty of data to show you that they don't. And when I first started doing secondary characters, because I love them, I love doing the secondary characters even more than doing Darcy and Elizabeth. The sales now compared to 3 years ago are much better for secondary characters, but they're still not going to hit the same numbers as a Darcy and Elizabeth book. And it depends on which secondary character you're playing with as well. Wickham is going to be one that's not going to be accepted as well. The Colonel is a good one. People like the Colonel. People like Mary stories. They've done, of all the secondary characters, they've done well. Surprisingly, Caroline has done well. Kitty has been okay. I did one book with her, but she had the Colonel with her, so that may be why she did well. I was a little surprised that the Georgiana one didn't do as well, as I kind of thought maybe Georgiana would do a little bit better, but she didn't. Anne is not a real huge favorite either. So you kind of have to experiment and see. And then if you stray away from Pride and Prejudice and you start doing other stories, I would suggest probably trying something other than Mansfield Park, because which is what I have done. It has a huge seller. It's still really good stories, but you have to know that they're just going to trickle in sales. They're not going to be big sales. You're not going to get as many reviews on them because you don't have as many sales. My secondary character books, if you look at them, I believe all of them have higher review ratings than my Darcy and Elizabeth ones, but there are fewer of them. So I might have 8 5-star ratings on a book that's a non-Darcy and Elizabeth, and then I might have 25 reviews on another book that is Darcy and Elizabeth, and it's averaging at like 4. Because you get those people who want high angst, and I'm sorry, you're just not going to get that from me.
Yeah.
It's not what I do. That's what other people do, and that's great. I'm glad they do it. It's just not really a Leenie thing at the moment. Yes, Rose. I see that.
If you're finished, I just wanted to.
Yeah, I think I am for now.
Something. Okay. I think a couple important things that you mentioned were that over the years, the sales have started to go up. So continue to offer yourself out there. It does feel scary and discouraging, posting, and I mean, don't be obnoxious about it, but don't get scared if you don't get a like or a new review or something. And also, you were talking about minor characters, but I had a book that it was my second novella that came out, Letters from the Heart. It's actually one of my highest rated ones. I think just about everyone that's read it has loved it. For example, like Meredith with Austin Ask Reviews, I think that's her favorite one that I've done. Compared to, I've had longer novels with, a lot more things in depth and everything, but I think that one's been her favorite so far. And it doesn't have a whole lot of reviews. It's slowly trickled up. I had it for free for a little bit. I had it for my newsletter to sign up for a little bit. I put it in different anthologies, and you'll see in the anthology reviews, everyone loves Letters from the Heart, but it's still been my lowest sales out of my Pride and Prejudice ones. The main characters. It's still Darcy and Elizabeth, but it was basically a Darcy and Elizabeth flop. But it's good writing and it's a good story. Apparently everyone likes it, but and everything I've done, sometimes you just can't really get it going. So do promo, don't get scared or something, but there are times when you need to just move on to the next book too. And again, that means, you put yourself out there again and people will see your name. I've still got sales on my first book. And, it's like 25 books later, people are still finally getting around to trying me. They have to see me constantly out there that many times. And, maybe if you had enough money, if you didn't have to worry about it, you could do 30 Mansfield Park books and people would finally try.
Right.
But
I will do more.
Yes, do more.
I'm stuttering.
Someday I want to do other Jane Austen stories too. Yeah, so it is scary. It's definitely not something that we're, made or have done all the right things or something, but
right.
Yeah, they have to just continue to see it. It's like feeding a toddler. You're going to try the peas. You're going to try my book.
Yeah, by the time they're 14, they might like peas. Yeah, it's and I have compared that to, like cabbage. My son, when he was young, he's just turning 21 this week. He threw up at the table once because he was trying to eat cabbage. He couldn't manage to eat the cabbage. I don't remember how old he was. He's probably about 4. He's got a very strong personality. But now when I ask, okay, so what should we have with, the turkey for Thanksgiving or whatever, he'll ask for cabbage. So, you kind of got to get them used to it. So it's kind of that way with secondary characters. Another thing I was just going to, this is not JAF related, this is just writing related advice that you normally hear. Don't just rely on Facebook, because Facebook changes things all the time, and those readers that are following you on Facebook are not your readers.
Right.
You don't have direct you don't have access to them if Facebook says, I'm sorry, we're not going to let you have your page anymore. We're not going to let you do this with groups anymore. Or if you're part of a group and they change their policy on promoting on their group, that can negatively impact you. So you need to look at finding ways that you can have contact with those readers. And I have readers that have told me, oh, I'm not on social media at all. So having my blog, they follow me on my blog, and they also have signed up for my newsletter. So I've got 2 places where I control what happens. So I've got my blog and I've got my newsletter. That's an important thing that they always tell you, that you should have some way that you can have contact with those readers without having to rely on a secondary source providing them for you. You can also join up with other authors, like Rose was saying, like we do that. We talk and stuff and work together in that. And obviously, Longbourn Literary Society, it's the 3 of us working together, pooling our resources. You can do that in newsletters as well. You can share between people on newsletters when you have releases, if that's something that you want to do with your newsletter. Another thing that they always say is the best way to advertise the book that you have now is to write another one.
Yeah.
So don't just put one out and then wait until you've made what you want on it. You know, start the next one right away. Keep writing. Keep putting things out there. If you have more in what we call the backlist, then a reader might be more willing to pick up one of your books because they know it's not just a one-off.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, if I like this author, oh, look, there's, 3 more books that I can read. Right. So, and if you're doing a series, which I think it looked like The New Beginnings was a series type thing.
Yeah.
It said book 1.
Yeah, book 1.
Series, from what I've heard, they don't really pick up as a series for readers until you've gotten to at least book 3. And sometimes it can be even book 5, depending on how long your series is. So my series, I've got 2 series that are just 4 books each. They're short. They've done better after I've gotten through that 4th book than they did before. Because for one thing, I've read series before that were supposed to be a certain number of books, and then they stopped. And you never knew what was going to happen. And readers don't want that, right?
No.
That's thinking of you.
I know, but I'm guilty. I've abandoned a series, and CreateSpace still won't take it down.
Yeah. To that point, I listened to a podcast, the Career Author podcast on Patreon. I haven't sponsored them yet because I've been listening for a few weeks just to see if it's something that I really like. And so far it has been, so I probably will be sponsoring them because they do these neat things for just $1 a month. You can get their review of a movie. They'll go through a movie, and they'll go through the movie as in the plot of how it's structured, which is kind of cool. But anyway, that's off topic. The one guy, Zach Bohannon, I think his name is, these are not small name writers in their field. They do, like, I don't know if it's thriller or if it's horror, it's something that I wouldn't necessarily do. He wrote a book, I believe it was a fantasy book, and it was supposed to be a trilogy, but it was really well received by the few people who read it, but there weren't that many people who read it. And he's, in that spot where, do I just leave it? Do I try to do more? And his view on it, which I know is not necessarily popular with some, is he needs to feed his family.
Right.
And between his wife's income and his income, they have to do that. And the only income he has is from his books. So he can't afford to finish that series.
Right.
Which I thought that was very open and honest. They were talking about mistakes that they had made.
That's great. Yeah.
It's very true.
So there's someone who had to abandon something just because it didn't sell well.
I'm not alone.
No.
I mean, I'm restructuring it too, and I do want to get back to it. I've been telling myself that I'm going to work on it like every weekend, like just a little bit at a time every weekend. I haven't actually done that yet, but it's always on the to-do list. But yeah, I mean, so few people, it's the series I'm talking about, if no one's familiar with it, is what did I call it? The Witches of Austin, something like that, where I was actually going to I mashed up Pride and Prejudice and Northanger Abbey. So I got rid of like Mary and Kitty and Lydia, and they all died in an epidemic. And so it was Elizabeth and Jane, and then Catherine Morland was their stepsister. And they were fulfilling an ancient prophecy, and had to like be united as real sisters, even though they weren't by blood. Blended family dynamics can be difficult and stuff. And it started, the first one was a short story, and then the second one was a novella. Then I was working on the third one, and it ended up getting into novel territory. And I never done like a whole lot of the world building that you're supposed to do with fantasy books. So I decided to just scrap all of it. But between it being paranormal and mashing out the different things, and I didn't have a whole lot of I didn't launch it very well to start with. I was in the middle of moving, and there was like a typo on the cover, and the cover wasn't great, and I changed the cover like 4 times. And yeah, so few people were interested in it that I do want to do it just because it interests me and I want to do it, but I have to wait until that fits with my income.
Right. You have to do it as a passion.
I'm in the same boat with Pride and Prejudice and race cars.
Right.
Because so few people the people that like the series love it, but so few of them, so few people are willing to read it. I wanted to have the third book out this year, and it's just, I don't see it happening.
Yeah.
I have to wait until I've built up some savings so I can bear a month with almost no sales. So
yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
And it stinks because I love that series. It's close to my heart. So
yeah, that's the way it goes. We have a couple more questions. We are going long here.
Sorry.
But should we try them anyway?
Yeah, let's try. There's only 3 of them. They're short. Let's try them anyway.
And two of them really go together pretty well, I think. So let me read all 3 of them first so that you know. Kimberly has 2. She has asked, where do your ideas for plot lines come from? I almost said bunnies because we always call it that. Do you set aside dedicated time for writing? So those are her 2. And then we had another one from Ellen who asked, do you have any plot bunnies that you have not dared to write? Okay, so first, let's start with the dedicated time because I think that'll probably be our fastest one, and then we can talk about plot bunnies.
I do. I've begun doing my writing first thing when I get in my office. So like I'm up late-ish. I'm up before. I don't know that I'm up before in the morning before Rose, but I am up generally before Eileen.
Oh,
but I go to bed before everybody else too.
I think the dogs get you up usually.
The dogs get me up, yeah. So after it's like noon before I'm up here generally, but then I take, depending on what else I have going on, I take, and I do a certain number of sprints, and I do that first, and then I can do other things. So yeah, I have a dedicated time for writing. Technically.
Do you want to go next, Eileen, or do you want me to go?
Sure, I can. I was just replying to Deborah Ann's comment. She had said, for a laugh, one of my dogs is barking at one of yours barking in the background. So that's so funny. I love that.
Annie screamed a minute ago, and then Jasper barked. I don't know if he heard it.
He probably did.
Yeah. I was like, and
dogs. I was like, oh well, whatever.
We joke all the time that Annie and Jasper could be like buddies. So I think that's what was going on. They were trying to talk to each other. And then the connection like broke up, and I was just like, Gotta put a pot there.
Okay, time. See, I'm pulling us back onto schedule. I kind of run on schedules pretty well, which is weird because I'm not a natural schedule person. I just know that my life tends to run a little better if I have some sort of plan. I don't like it to be too rigid, but I find the more that I work with it, the more rigid I'm getting because it works, and I don't want to break it because it took me so long to get it to work because I'm not a natural schedule person. Well, I homeschool in the first part of my day. So from about noonish until 4 in the afternoon is when we do our homeschool, because I don't get up until around 10:30 in the morning. That's because I usually am not in bed until about 2 a.m. So it sounds like I'm sleeping in, but really some mornings when I wake up at 10:30, I've only had 5 hours of sleep because I was up later doing stuff. So I do my homeschool. Then I have to do all the family type stuff. You know, they insist on eating and all that and having clean clothes to wear and stuff. So after supper, most nights, I will start working around 7. Sometimes it'll be a little bit later, 8. One night, it's a lot later than that because it's the night my older sister always calls me. So that's, more important than work. And I will work from then until midnight or 1. And the reason I don't get to bed until about 2 or 3 after that is sometimes I'll do, like some social media or some promoting type stuff afterwards. And I need, after writing, to have a couple of hours for my brain to calm down so that I can, forget about what I was doing and actually go to sleep. Because if I don't, then halfway through the night, I'm going to wake up thinking about whatever story it is more often than I do anyway. So I do have a scheduled time, and I like to start my work time, which is after supper, with editing. So I have an editing block of time, depending on what projects are in production at that time. And then I do my writing after that because the editing somehow pulls my brain from the regularness of the day and puts it into a story mode. And then I can start my writing after that. Monday through Thursday, I will write on whatever is the next release that's going to be coming out. On Fridays, I have been working on the Thursday story for my blog. I will schedule what I've written the week before after going through it. And so that's my editing time. And then I will post it, schedule it to my blog, schedule it to my Patreon page, that sort of thing. Saturdays and Sundays, I don't normally write. Sometimes I will, depending on what needs to be done. Saturdays, I do blog stuff. I get all my blog stuff ready for the week. And Sunday is kind of an overflow day because sometimes I don't get everything done for the blog on Saturday. So I'll do that on Sunday, and I'll often set up some graphics or create a little excerpt video or whatever on Sundays. So I try to force myself not to write on 2 days of the week, just to give my brain a bit of a creative break, I guess you could say. But that's my schedule.
Am I hearing myself?
You're echoing.
Yeah.
That was weird.
I thought maybe because I have Facebook open, but I didn't have the sound on the video, so I thought maybe, but whatever. It's gone now, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not hearing it either. Okay. Yeah, so ideally I have a little bit of a schedule, and like Zoe, I like to do the sprints. I usually do 15 or 20 minutes, and a lot of times I will go longer once I've gotten in the groove. And like Leenie, when I need to edit, I also need to block that in. However, right now, since this move and with the difficulties with my child with school and everything, I'm not really having true time the way I should. So a lot of times I can start getting stuff done once they're asleep. And if my husband's home. For one, like he travels a lot. And my daughter just doesn't sleep as well when he's gone. And then I can relax a little better knowing that if he's home and one of the kids needs me or gets out of the bed, then, he's got that and I don't have to keep stopping. But I always try. It just doesn't always get done when he's gone. And then a lot of times right now on the weekends. So I'm trying to get better about doing more during the day when they're at school. But like right now, Teddy's getting out at 11:30. And for a week there, the plan was for me to pick him up from school the minute he had a problem. My son has autism and he's adjusting to new school. And I had to be near the school, which is like 20 minutes away from the house. So I was spending my mornings there. And yeah. And then before that, I was homeschooling, like Leenie. And I feel like I did have a way better routine then. So Teddy's turned a corner, hopefully, with school. And so hopefully things are going to get a little bit more routine. But yeah, I honestly have no idea how I got that last release out. There have been plenty of times too. And I say this because every time it's happened, I say it won't happen again. And then it always does. Between like Leenie, where the characters just get so involved in my head, I can't leave the story. And so I end up writing, I'll start at 8:00 and I'll do my sprints, I take little breaks and stuff, but I'm working on the book, busy with the book until 3:00 in the morning sort of thing. Once between, I'll either have a deadline or I'm just looking at my sales and going, oh, okay, I need to hurry up and get this out. or the story is just gripping me. There's always a part in every story where it's just after a while, if I don't get this out and if I don't get this done, my brain is going to explode. I can't, like there's the exciting new part. And then there's like, I'm plodding along in the middle. And then once you get towards the end, it's just, for me, it's just like a rush. I'm like, gotta get it done. So yeah, unfortunately, I'm not a good one to ask about schedule. I wish I could be a Leenie.
Well, my children are older, so maybe when yours are older. It's only a few years. All right, so then let's tackle some plot bunnies. Where do you get your ideas, basically, and are there any that you would not dare to write? Well, I get my ideas from everywhere. Everywhere. There's not a safe moment in the day for me to, just go through life without something maybe popping up. Mm-hmm. If I'm listening to music, there might be something in the lyrics or just in the melody. There might be someone who does something when you're out at the store that makes you think, oh, that could be interesting. You might read something, you might watch something. It's just everywhere for me. I don't have a safe zone. I remember my husband and I went to a movie, and in the very dark movie theater, the lights are down except for the screen, I pulled out a notebook and a pencil from my purse and started scribbling something which is barely legible because I couldn't see really to write it. He goes, "You are not writing down an idea, are you?" I said, "No." So it happens everywhere. I still haven't used that idea, but it's still there. Yeah. I'm sure it's probably the same for you guys too.
I get a lot of my ideas, to be honest, from reading other Jaff. Especially, I mean, I don't read as much now because I'm writing so much, but I have read dozens of stories and thought, I could do that better. And then a story just starts coming, But my very first story, and I don't really know where the idea came from. My very first book was I Promise Too. And I had run out of things to read. And I was laying in bed one night. And one of my teacher friends kept saying, you should write your book. You should write a book. And I was like, I don't know how to write. And the idea just came to me. And I was like, why can't blah, 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 blah happen? Mm-hmm. And it turned into I Promise Too. So sometimes I don't know where they come from. They just come to me. Bodhi, Darcy's Bodhi Mind, the idea came, I was in a group of readers and Jaff readers and Jaff authors, and one of them had gone on vacation to Bodhi. And she was sharing vacation pictures, and somebody came up with, the idea of turning this into a Jaff, and they were like, I don't remember how it got, became my idea, but and the initial story idea is barely in Darcy's Bodhi Mind, but it is there. So it comes from other people, but vacation pictures, it comes from other Jaff books, and it comes, quite frankly, from I don't know where. They just pop into my head, and there they are.
Yeah. During the shower is a good time to come up with ideas.
Yeah.
So, like Leenie, I think I get ideas probably pretty much everywhere I go. The car when I'm driving is another big one, and then I can't write, but I've got an iPhone, so I'm like taking notes, and there's kids, talking or screaming in the background too. But early on, I got a lot of ideas from just the text of Pride and Prejudice. That's not going to work as well if you are interested in writing original work, obviously. But I just started to wonder, and again, I was reading the Jaff too, but I started to wonder, well, what if that happened? And what if this happened? And what if this changed? Because there's so many moments in there where I think like one of my favorite ones to think about, because you can do it so many different ways, is what if Darcy actually talked to Elizabeth in the library? Or what if she didn't meet Wickham until later? Or, there's just so many different ways. Mm-hmm. What if the events are mixed up and they meet at another location first? What if they meet at Rosine's first? And that happens. And then they go to Hertfordshire or London or something else. Like, there's just so many different ways. And so I made a big list and thought that I would kind of chronologically work through them. I think I've done 2 or 3 from that list. And I just keep getting new ideas. And I totally chase the shiny new plot bunny. And I abandon things and go chase the next thing, because I'd rather work with what's fresh in my mind and what's pulling on me than stubborn it out and say, no, I will. Obviously, that doesn't help if you have something on pre-order, then you have to stick with it. But otherwise, you can go chase the bunny.
Through the underbrush. Through the underbrush, down into the trench. Yeah.
Yeah. So as for if there's something that you wouldn't write, I think I've broken all my rules of the things that as a reader I would read and I would scoff at or something and say, oh, no, never. I think I've broken them. For example, many years ago, I was a reader and a writer on a forum called A Happy Assembly, and they have this thread called Looking for a Story, and someone was asking about a forced marriage scenario where there's usually someone that always says, oh, well, you guys will work it out, you're made for each other and stuff within the forced marriage scenario, and it's supposed to give somebody some wisdom or some hope, like quit being such a drama queen or king, because it can be Darcy plenty of times, and like calm down, which I think it stood out to me because I was writing No Cause for Repine at the time, and that's a forced marriage scenario. So, it stood out to me. So they asked, has there ever been a story where Darcy and Elizabeth are forced to get married without loving each other, and then they just never fall in love? And so I commented, I was like, well, I hate that idea, obviously, but also story-wise, like, how do you structure that? In a Regency marriage, there's not divorce. You're married until you die. And where's the conflict? Where's the climax? Where's the resolution there? It's been 20 years. Darcy's on his deathbed. Do you love me yet, Lizzie? Nope. Oh, okay. Like, maybe just in other genres you can do that, but like as a romance, you need to have the happily ever after, right? And I'm not saying that Jane Austen fan fiction or Jane Austen is only romance either, by the way. And then obviously in a modern story, why stay married if you're not in love with each other, or at least respecting each other? There's plenty of stories out there where they have to get married for other reasons, usually with the idea that eventually they'll get divorced and then they fall in love along the way and happily ever after, right? So that like story like just couldn't get out of my head, and I was just like, I think terrified that somebody else would do it the wrong way. Like Zoe says, I can do it better. I think all writers, we can be super insecure and humble, but I think we all have a little bit of arrogance. My attempt at it, at least, is worthy of someone's time. Anyway, so one day I had really bad like cramps, menstrual cramps, and I was just sad and depressed and crying anyway. And this whole idea came to me of Darcy and Elizabeth getting married and from a forced situation and her never loving him. At least that's what he thinks. And then it turns out that she did, but some couples just don't articulate it. Some people in general don't even say it very much. And so they have a comfortable marriage and they like each other and they respect each other, but there's these barriers that they have where they're not speaking how they feel. And their insecurities have fed off one another because instead of having open communication, they're just kind of in survival instinct. And so he finds out after some sort of tragedy happens that, oh, she did love him. And then I close with the situation that I wanted to leave open to the reader as either they're in heaven and they finally get their chance, or it was just a bad dream and he woke up. So that's how that story stayed for a long time, and it totally traumatized probably at least half the people that read it because I didn't actually give any warning about what was going to happen.
Matter of fact, I didn't read it. I heard about it and I said,
I read
nope.
it.
Mm-hmm. And then that's actually a portion of The Secrets of Pemberley. I kept having this idea of what would make Darcy do the situation where he ends up compromising Elizabeth and what's going through his mind, and you know, why wouldn't he talk to her about it and stuff. So he needed to have like this gigantic backstory, which ended up becoming, oh, he's actually illegitimate and he's not open with anybody because he's terrified of his secret. And yeah, another one is Elizabeth marrying Mr. Collins and actually having a child with Mr. Collins. Not just like they're married, but she's smart enough to like sneak out of the bedroom stuff, or he dies on the honeymoon, or all these other scenarios that have happened out there. Yeah, so I think the only thing that I haven't done is I will never match Elizabeth with Wickham. I just personally, I don't think she would willingly go into that. I mean, maybe if he had like a gun to her sister's head or something. And I'm not a fan of matching Elizabeth with the Colonel first, because I truly believe Darcy and Elizabeth have to go together. Like right now, I think the trend is Elizabeth and Bingley first. And then how do you get untangle that? And I can see Elizabeth being attracted to Bingley and the Colonel, because they're outgoing and they're nice, and you know Wickham was too and everything. But I think since they're closer to Darcy, it upsets me that he would have to have that pain from a close friend or relative. And then, especially like if they go so far that they're engaged or married, one of them has to die. And I don't want Bingley or Colonel Fitzwilliam to die. Usually, okay, I have killed Bingley and pretended to kill Bingley. I'm a bad writer, people.
She's evil.
Like I said, I've broken a lot of things I thought I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say about that.
I think the only plot bunnies that I would not do, well, there are several that I wouldn't do in Jeff just because I don't like. I spent many years in junior high school with drama, like crazy, silly drama. I don't really want to repeat that in a book.
Right.
And that's why I wouldn't do that. But I might write something like that if I needed money and I needed a story out or something. Maybe I'd write something like that. I don't know. But I don't think I would ever. Well, I'll say it this way. What Jane has put together, let no author tear asunder.
Yes.
Right?
Good. No, I have a story where Jane doesn't marry Bingley. Okay.
Yes.
Most of the time, yeah.
Yeah. But if it's the main hero, the main heroine, I would not separate them because Jane knew what she was doing.
Yes.
They're her
Yeah.
stories. They're her characters. She knows them best, so she knew what she was doing. And I personally have toyed with the idea of breaking up Jane and Bingley, but I haven't been able to do it yet. I will, however, I have Touches of Austen series, which is original stories that just have touches of Austen in them. Mansfield Park is my favorite story in the world. I think Edmund and Fanny are a wonderful couple. Jane Austen tells us how extremely happy they end up being, and I would never break them up in a Jaff story. I just wouldn't, because that's what Jane wrote, so that's the way I'm going to keep it, because I do respect her work with her characters enough to do that. But when I wrote His Beautiful Bee, Beatrice is a variance of Fanny. She's not exactly the same. She is not sent away from her family and stuff, so she's not quite as insecure or anything, but she's quiet and has a lot of Fanny likeness to her. And she likes the younger son of the neighbor that's kind of taken them under his wing. And she wants to get this younger son to like her, so she's been pining away for him for years. And his brother, who would be representative of Tom Bertram, decides to help her. Well, of course, it backfires on him, because then he realizes how much he really loves Bee, and then she realizes that what she really wants is him, not his brother. And I wouldn't do that in a Jaff story, because I wouldn't break up Edmund and Fanny, but in a original that's just based on, I will. So I've got an idea for Sense and Sensibility. I would never, in a Jaff, break up Edward and Eleanor. But I don't mind doing it in a Touches of Austen, because that's just based on it. It's my own characters. It's my own creation. So I can develop them the way that I need them to be, to end up being the happiest couple that they could be, which I think is what Jane was doing with her couples too. She was developing in them in such a way that they were the happiest couple that she could be them. Right? So that would be my one thing. And there are story plots, non-Jaff story plots, that I would never write, just because they're dark. They're very dark. So I don't think that it would be to my benefit to write, like, they edge on, I know I write really, really sweet stuff, but they edge on horror, really. So, I mean, I do have that part in there. I could pull that out more, but I just choose not to. And there was one other. Oh my goodness, that thought has probably flown. No, it's usually any of the plots that my husband gives me, I will not write. Because his plots always involve either or both Darcy and Elizabeth dying in some fashion. Usually it's Darcy first and then Elizabeth next, but he's always trying to kill off Darcy. So I won't do his plot either, although we do laugh about them and I pretend. What if I did? You know, we do that sort of thing. But so that would be another one I wouldn't do. But otherwise, I'm pretty open. I've said, you know, I've never write this, I'll never write that. And as soon as you say it, you know somewhere along the line you're going to write it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like I said, I would never write modern, but I do have a short story that's a modern, and I have been toying with a few modern-like ideas that maybe someday. I just don't know if I'm familiar enough with the modern world to write it realistically. That's what I told my sister the other day when we were talking about it. Like, I have to probably get out and see people more often or something. But anyway, those are just a few things that I would never do. And then if Zoe, if you had any, and then we should probably be ending because we are
I'll keep
approaching an hour and a half.
I'll keep mine short and sweet. Basically, I will never break up Darcy and Elizabeth. I don't know about Jane and Bingley because they're always kind of peripheral in my stories, but I will never break up Darcy and Elizabeth. I probably wouldn't write. I wouldn't write horror because I'm not into that anything like that. But the short answer is I will never break up Darcy and Elizabeth. They're on public record saying that now. So hopefully there will be no more questions.
Would you have them like a love triangle where they're starting with somebody else?
No. I'm just not into love triangles. I just can't. I can't do it. I can't do it. I just, in real life, I look at people and go, you must not love him if you're so.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't understand the whole loving multiple people at once. For a long time, I was really Mary Ann about it for a long time. Like I couldn't understand how if you really love somebody later, then maybe you didn't really love the person before, was kind of my thought.
It is silly.
Oh no. But when I was writing Undone Business with Jane and Bingley, something happens to Bingley and Jane does not have a choice at all. She has to move on with her life. And she does fall in love with another man, but it didn't mean that she didn't love Bingley. So that was an educational experience for me.
I do believe in second chances.
Yeah.
I have to believe in second chances, given my situation. Okay. But I don't like my fiction to be too lifelike. You know what I mean? I want
an escape.
Yeah. I mean, I want my favorite characters to have that bond. Let's get them together early and married early, and let's just get them. They can face the world. So there we go.
I like my fiction that way too. I was listening to another podcast, and the guy, when he started out, he had a job that he didn't like. It was horrible. He didn't like it. It was stressful. And then he would come home and he would write his book. And he said there was no way that he wanted to come home and spend another 6 hours going through what he had just gone through during the day and being tormented. He wanted an escape. And I thought the way he had said that was really good. That's what I like in my writing. That's what I like in my reading. I know there's going to be a happily ever after. You know Darcy and Elizabeth are going to get together, or that author is never ever going to be read again, right? I mean, it's kind of one of the requirements that you do in JAF. But I don't, like, I would teach all day and I would deal with, she's mad at her for this reason, and he said that, so we can't even talk to him. And I mean, you'd put up with that for 6 hours every day. I didn't want to come home and read a book with adults in it doing the exact same thing that the 13, 14, 15, 16-year-olds were that I had worked with all day. So my characters, I try to let them be adults and kind of, I guess it's the teacher in me, I don't know, demonstrate how adults should be with each other. I know they aren't. I mean, just scroll Facebook and you know that many adults have not matured past 16 years old. But in my books, they have. Even Lydia gets to mature and become what she should be. And I like to have that role. And I have said in the past, I will never do a jerk Darcy because there are enough jerks in the world. I don't need to create an example of how to be a jerk. I would rather create an example of how not to be a jerk. So there are a few little things like that play into my writing. But that's probably why I don't get quite as many sales as others. I don't know. But that's just the way that I believe so. And I think that's I think that's true with a lot of authors, is there's a lot of what you believe and what you can tolerate and what you maybe struggle with and think about that goes into the writing that you do. And maybe it's not something that you would necessarily accept in your life as right, but it's something that you kind of struggle through and think about as you write about it. There should be part of an author and their work, I think, personally. Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm going to stop talking now.
Okay.
Was there anything else that we should say before we say goodbye?
Not that I can think of.
No.
Trying to restrain myself and stay on topic.
I know. It's hard, isn't it? You get the three of us together, we could just talk forever.
We really need to actually be together sometime.
We do.
We do. You guys should get your visas. Oh, Deborah,
I have mine. Yeah. Wait, do you need a visa to go into Canada?
No,
you need
a
a
passport.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you need a
passport.
Okay. Yeah, my passport's still good. Oh, no, it expires this year.
Oh.
No.
So
I
have to update all that. Kathy or Zoe needs to.
Zoe needs to get a passport card.
Yeah.
Are those also good for 10 years, or are they short term?
I can't remember.
I can't remember either.
Anyway, I think Deborah Ann has told us that we have covered everything, so we are good.
Awesome.
So we can say goodbye for another week, and we'll see how things get set up next week. We may have to go through my page again. Facebook has changed some things about groups. They're changing a lot of things because of all the kerfluffle that's going on with them. So we'll let you know how it pans out. We'll see you next week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.